All right, guys, so this is going to be the video for section 7. What we're going to do in here is we're going to add a 4th level, and we're going to actually add a boss character to the game and kind of get him working and all that going. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new layout. So you're going to right click on the layout folder. We're going to add a layout. Now, I think I did show you a trick before when we did between level 2 and 3 that like you could just right click and you could like duplicate the level and then you'd have all of the layers and stuff in there already. So you could do that again for level 4 if you want to. I'm going to make it from scratch just so that you remember how to do everything. But you do whatever works best for you. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to add a layout. And I am going to say add layout only because we already have an event sheet we're going to use for it. Okay. In the right here, I'm going to rename it level, capital L, and the number 4, no spaces. Okay, remember the labeling of the levels is really important because that's how our exits work. They need to be labeled properly, otherwise it doesn't work. Okay, and then I am going to start by going in and adding all of the layers that we had. So what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to right click and I'm just going to keep adding layers to the top. Right click again, layer to top, and I have them all. That way, if I add them all in first, I know that the bottom layer, that layer 0, that's the layer that is not transparent, so that needs to stay on the bottom. If you messed any of that up or if you're not sure, just make sure all of the top layers, this transparent box is checked on the left side. That's super important, okay? So layer 0 down here at the bottom is going to be background. I just call it BG for short. Okay, and then I think the next one is the blocks layer. And then after that is the main layer. And then the top one is our HUD layer. Okay, it's extremely important that the HUD layer is labeled correctly, just like how your other ones were. So mine, the HUD was just HUD capital, like that. And then we need to set the parallax again on these so that it scrolls properly. So a really common mistake I see when people turn in games is they make the layers, but they don't set the parallaxes on the new layers. So then on one level, everything scrolls correctly, and then the next level, they don't scroll right. So make sure that we do that. So the HUD's parallax is 0, 0, which actually, because we made the HUD layer global, it recognized it when I named it that, so it kept that automatically. So if you labeled it correctly, that one should be good. The background layer, though, is not a global layer, so that one will not set automatically. So that, I believe we did 75. So I'm going to do 75, comma 75. Okay, and then that should be good. And then main and blocks parallax should stay at 100. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is on our level 4 layout, we're going to set the size. It's going to be a little bit smaller than our other layouts. Now, just like on the other levels, you can be as creative as you want on your level design. So if you want to change the size and make it a bigger level, you can. But for this demonstration, we're just going to go 1600 by 720. So I've highlighted level 4 here on the right. And then on the left in the properties here, we can change it to 1600 by 720. While we're over here in the properties, we need to add an event sheet. Notice right here it says there's no event sheet assigned. So we need to give it the ES game event sheet, otherwise I won't have access to any of the code. So that's a really important piece to make sure that you have there as well. Okay, now that I have my level laid out here, you can see that it's a lot smaller than the other levels. It will still scroll a little bit. Okay. Um, Next thing we're going to do is you want to make sure before we add objects here that you highlight the correct layer. So I'm going to go on the blocks layer, okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and find the ground and the platform objects. So here's my ground objects. I can put them on. Now remember, to get this to snap in correctly, we need to go ahead and set up the grid. So I'm going to click on level 4 on the right. And I'm going to double check the size of this, 572 by 60. Okay, so click on level 4, go to show grid, snap to grid, and then grid size 572 by 60 because it's the same size as our ground object. So 572, 60, there we go. And then that should just snap in. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill the bottom with the ground objects. That should be good. It can overlap at the end. That's not an issue. Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and get our platform objects on here. And the platforms I want to say was 55 by 40, but I'll double check that. So let's grab a platform. Let's put that on here. Yep, so it's 60 by 40, and then but we make the grid 55 by 40, so we have a 5 pixel overlap. So we're going to go ahead and click on level 4. Change our grid size to 55 by 40. Perfect. And then now the platforms can snap in. So you just want to set up a simple level. And once again, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but you want to set up something where you can at least put some ammo down. It's really important that you have ammo on this level because basically you're going to be fighting a boss, okay? And the boss is going to require 5 hits to destroy. Well, if you come into the level with only 3 ammo, and you don't have any way to get ammo, it's going to be impossible to destroy the boss. So you have to, at a bare minimum, put at least 2 ammo objects down because that'll give you 6 ammo. So at a bare minimum, if you died with 0 ammo, you would at least have 6 ammo you can collect to try to defeat the boss. So just set up something kind of simple like this. I might even lower these a little bit here, or maybe I may just lower 2 of those down like that. Just something where Flip can jump and like get up into this area. And then I'm going to turn all the grid stuff off. And then I'm going to switch to the main layer and put some ammo on. And like I said, put a bare minimum of 2 on there. You can put more though if you want. If you want to add 3 and make it so Flip can have 9 ammo every time, that's fine. Okay, and if you want those to line up really straight, you could leave them in a grid or you could set up a different grid to put those in. Okay, but it's really important these are all in the right layers, which we did that correctly, so we're good to go there. Okay, we also need to add Flip to the layout. So once again, make sure you're on the main layer. Go to your project window here in the upper right. Just grab Flip and put him on where he needs to be. And then we also need the boundary object because we don't want Flip falling off. So I'm just going to put a boundary on the far left and then also a boundary on the far right. If you've been putting ceiling boundaries on and you want to do that, you can put a ceiling boundary, but as long as it's like super tall that Flip can't ever jump over it, you should be fine. So that's it for those main objects so far. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to add the boss into our game. So you're going to be on the main layer, just double click somewhere out here, and we are going to add a sprite. We're going to call it boss. Insert, click on the screen to put them in. The first animation is just going to be like a default animation, so I'm going to click the load folder to load it. Okay, and then I just have to go ahead and find my folder again. So if I just go to Flip, if I just go to desktop, and then desktop here, and then I believe it was under old desktop, and then into the game design assets, Flip assets, images. All right, sorry that took me a minute. Okay, so once you're in your assets here, the boss assets are these dragon ones. So we have dragon, dragon jump, dragon shoot, and dragon walk. So you can see the 3 of these are just single frames. So the dragon is going to be the default. So we can just double click that. We have the dragon there. In the animation window, I'm just going to right click it. And I'm just going to rename this default. Okay, and that should be good for that one. We're going to go ahead and add a couple more animations in. So we're going to right click up here in the upper right, add an animation. We're going to rename this one jump. We're going to add another animation, and we're going to rename this one shoot. And we're going to add another animation called walk. Okay, and that's all just by right-clicking the add animation and then right-click rename. Okay, so the default is in, so we're going to go to the jump and we're going to load that in. That's just a single frame. So here's drag and jump. That's fine. Go ahead and go to the shoot. Click the load folder in the upper left, single frame, drag and shoot. There it is. Then the walk one actually has an animation frame. So just remember that when we're doing an animation with multiple frames, you go down to the animation frame window at the bottom. We're going to right click. We're going to import frames from a strip. So remember, a strip means that all of the frames are on a single image file. So since we see all the animations in a strip on one file, that's what importing a strip is. And this one, if I count really quick, I think there's 8 frames there. So I'm going to double click it. For the horizontal cells, I'm going to say 8. I'm going to leave vertical at 1. I'm going to have it replace the whole animation and click import. Okay. Then on the walk animation, make sure it's highlighted and that you can see this. Go down to the properties and we're going to change 2 things. We're going to make the speed 8 so it animates a little bit faster. And we're going to click the loop box so that the animation will loop. Okay, so look at it carefully. You should see the 4 animations here: default, jump, shoot, and walk, and they all should be the different frames, and then walk should have the full animation on there. Speed 8 and loop yes. Okay, the last thing we need to do to kind of get the animation set up is we're going to click on the collision box, which is the little triangle down here on the left that I just turned yellow. And you'll see that it's just guessing the box and it's not very good at all. And so for the dragon, we just want to get a simple box for him. So we're going to right click in the middle. We are going to set to bounding box. We also want all of the other frames to match that. So we're going to right click again and we're going to say apply to all animations. And now everything should have that nice bounding box on there. Okay. So that should be good to go. Then one additional thing we have to do is on the shooting animation, he is going to be shooting fireballs out of his mouth. So right now, if we programmed it as is, they would shoot out of the origin point, which would come out of his back here, which is not where we want the fireball to come out of. So this is just like how we did the coconut on Flip's gun, where we're going to make an additional image point that's going to be on the open mouth. So in the image point window, so you click on this little target here on the left, image point window, right click in the open space, add a new image point. When image point 1 is highlighted, then you just click on the mouth here, and then that's where we're going to program the fireball to come out. Okay, so if you've done all that, you can close the image window. The boss should be good. He can just be kind of chilling out here for now. Then we're going to give him a behavior. The main behavior the boss is going to have is platform, because he's going to move kind of like Flip and like how the knights do. So we click the behavior button here on the left with the dragon highlighted, add a behavior. We're going to get platform. You could just start typing it if you want to find it fast. Okay. And platform should be the only behavior he needs. Then we're going to change some properties on the platform behavior. So if I go here on the left side, if the dragon's highlighted and he has platform, these behaviors or these properties should be here. So we're going to change the max speed down to 100, slow him down a little bit. Okay. That stuff is all good there. And then we just need to take default controls off. Okay. If default controls are left on, I would be controlling the dragon with the keyboard, which I don't want. So you want to turn that off so we can manually program it. It's the same way as with the knights. Okay. Then we're going to give the dragon a couple of instance variables. So once again, with the dragon highlighted, you can scroll here on the left and you should see the blue instance variables button. So remember, an instance variable, it's basically just a variable that's tied to a specific instance of an object. So basically we want this particular dragon to have its own like health and hit points and all of that. And we don't want it to be global because we want it to only be like for this instance of the object. So instance variables are pretty important. So we're going to add an instance variable and we're going to give him 2. One instance variable is going to be called action, and this is just like how we gave action to the knights. This variable is what we're going to use to control his movement. So the action, instead of a number, we're going to make it a string, okay? And the initial value, we're going to just say idle, which means he's just not moving, okay? Then we're going to make another instance variable for the dragon, and this is going to be his health. And that can be a number, and we're going to start him at 5 health. Now in your game, you could adjust this if you want to. Maybe you do some edits to your game where you can shoot a lot of bullets very fast and you want to give the dragon like 100 health and you have to like shoot him with a machine gun a whole bunch. Maybe you want him to take less hits because your game's more difficult or something like that and it's harder to hit the dragon, so you want to make it that you don't have to hit him as much. It's totally up to you, okay? So, but for the default, this is kind of what we're doing. All right, so with that set, I think we should be good. We did all that. So now what we're going to do next is we're going to make a fireball for the dragon to shoot out. So we're going to double click out here. We're still on the main layer, which is good. I'm going to actually double check, make sure my dragon got on the right layer. Yes, he did. Okay. So we're going to make another sprite. This one's going to be called Fireball. Okay, we're going to click on the screen to add it in. The Fireball does have an animation frame. So we're going to right click down in the frames window, import frames from a strip. And we're going to go ahead and find the fireball. I probably passed it already. There it is. So this is just 4 frames. So you're gonna make sure that horizontal says 4, replace the whole animation, click import, and it's in. We are gonna change some of the animation stuff here. So we're gonna put the speed to 8, and we're gonna say loop on so that it loops. And we should be good to go with that. So you can close that image window. Make sure that the fireball is below off screen here. Otherwise, like if we put it up here, we don't want to like start the layout and have this flying across the screen. So just put it off screen. So the general rule is like with bullets or objects that get spawned in later, you always want them off screen on your layout, but they do have to exist there. Otherwise, the computer doesn't know what properties to spawn them in with. So we have to have one here with property set so it knows kind of the general rule of what we want for those. Okay, so we're going to give it bullet behavior. So make sure the fireball is highlighted. Go to behaviors, add a behavior. We're going to put bullet on. Once again, you can just type in the first few letters if you want to find it fast. It does need another behavior because we want it to get destroyed if it leaves the layout. So there is, if we go to behaviors again, there is a destroy outside of layout behavior. We're going to give it that too. So that behavior just means if it physically leaves the layout, it just gets destroyed. So that's a really nice safeguard so that we don't have a bunch of bullets off screen that are just taking up space and not really doing anything. So those are the two behaviors we want. Okay. Then what we're going to do for this bullet is change a couple of settings here. So for the speed, we're actually going to set the speed to -400. And the reason why is this. You can see the dragon here is on the right side of the screen, right? By default, a bullet is going to fly to the right. And so what we're going to do is if we give it a negative speed, it'll actually go in the opposite direction. So we're going to give it -400. Now, in the end, whether you put positive or -400 here actually won't matter, because later on when we program the dragon shooting it, we're going to specifically tell it an angle of motion to go. And so whether this is positive or negative won't matter because it's going to force itself in that direction anyway. So as long as you have 400 there, you're good. So I guess whether it's positive or negative doesn't really matter. The only difference will be is if you put this as a positive 400, before we put in the angle of motion event, when the dragon shoots, it's going to fly to the right. So if that's going to bug you, you can put at -400 and I'll at least go to the left before we put in the angle of motion event. Okay. So that part is all good. Set angle should be on. So you just have to put that -400. But even if you didn't change it, it would be fine. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to make a boss marker sprite. Basically what happens is the dragon's going to be moving around randomly, but we want to limit the area that he can move. We don't want him walking all the way up to the beginning here and trying to attack you. So we're going to kind of hug him inside of a small area here. So we are going to double click out here to make a new sprite, and we're going to call it boss marker. Okay, we're going to insert that in. This can just be a paint bucketed color, so just pick maybe a color you haven't used for anything else. So I might do like a pink or something. Okay, you can just paint bucket it in. Size doesn't really matter. And basically what it's going to be essentially is we're going to stretch it really long and it's going to be kind of thinner. And it's going to be like an invisible marker and we're going to put one on each side to block him in. Okay. There is, if you want to type this in, we can put in a specific size and position. Otherwise, if you want to just eyeball it and drag it like this, that's fine. But in the presentation, they tell you a specific position. So they say put it at 770 by 360. And then for size, they want 10 by 720. So if we do size, let's go 10, 720. Okay, and so that's what they recommend is that. So as long as you do that or something similar to that, you should be good to go. Okay, the other thing is in the properties window, we do want this to be invisible. So we're going to go down to initially visible and uncheck it because we want it to be invisible so the player doesn't see it. And then we basically want to make another one of these. So remember, there's two ways to do it. You could either go on the right here in the project window and just drag one in, or you can hold control and drag one out of the first one. So either way you want to do it is fine. And then once again, for the second one, you could just eyeball it, but we need one on the left side of the dragon, one on the right side of the dragon. They tell you for position in the presentation. In the presentation, they want at 1285, 360. So we'll do that. So 1285, 360. Okay, and then it's there. The size is already set from the last one, and it should already be invisible because we copied it from the last one, so we're good to go. And then once those two are set, just make sure the dragon is somewhere in between them, and then you're good to go there. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to make a wall sprite that is going to block, to help block fireballs, so that Flip has something he can kind of hide behind. So we're going to just double click out here again. We're going to make another sprite. We're going to call it wall. Insert and put that on. This one we can just load in a single frame, and I think it's just called wall. Yep, right here. And that one, we don't really have to do anything with that in terms of settings. So this, it's just kind of somewhere out here in front so it can block. You can put it where you want, or the suggested position is 755 by 615. Okay, so I'm going to put that in for position. All right, so that's where they're saying to put it. So if you want to, and then this wall does need to be solid. So we're going to add a behavior to the wall, and we're going to call it solid. Okay, and then that's in there and good to go. And I believe the collision box should be good on it. I'll double check it. I mean, it's not perfect. This collision box would work fine, but if you want to make it a bounding box, you can. Yeah, I think that's a little bit safer, but whatever you wanted to do. All right, so we got the wall there. Perfect. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put a cage in here. And the cage is going to be the thing. Basically, the goal is you're trying to save your monkey friends from the dragon. So this cage is going to be a cage filled with monkeys. And basically, when you touch it, you're going to win the game. So let's go ahead and add that in. So we're going to add another sprite. We're going to call it cage. And we're going to insert that. This definitely has animation frames. So you're going to right click on the animation frame window, import frames from a strip. You're going to find the cage sprite. Now, a lot of people miss it because it's this thin little bar here. And the reason why you can't really tell what it is because there's 20 frames in there. So it's a lot of frames. So people are in here looking for like a big cage with a monkey and they don't see it, but it's this thin little bar here and it'll look better once we put it in. So you double click it. And for the horizontal, you have to put in 20. Make sure it says replace and then you're good to go. And now you can see all the frames are in there and the monkeys are jumping around. Okay. For the cage, we want it to have a speed of 20. So I'm going to click on animation 1. We're going to change the speed to 20. And we do definitely need it to loop. Okay. Perfect. And that can just go somewhere here on the right side so that you have to get by the dragon to get to it. Okay. Now, something we haven't done to our level 4 yet is we still need to put a background on there. So we should probably do that. So let's click on the background layer. And what we can do is we can just use a background that we already have. So you could just pick any of these other backgrounds that you've previously used. So I'll just take like this level 3 background and put it on here. And what I'll do is I will put the position at 0, 0. And to me, that should be fine. If there's a different background you want to put in here, that's totally fine. It's up to you. You can see back here, it extends outward. That's not a big deal. That's fine. Or if it really bothers you, you could click on the background and actually shrink it down. And we do want to have that locked down. But if I wanted to, I could take the size here and do 1600 by 720. This isn't super necessary, but you can do it if you want it to like match up perfectly there. So now if I do that, you can see it fits perfectly there. And then I do want to get that locked down so I don't accidentally drag and move that out. Okay. And now that we put the background on there, you can see that the ammo and score and all that showed up. That's because once we put the HUD layer on, it was global. It put all that stuff over for us. So never add these text objects on manually. Otherwise, you're going to double up and have extra text objects. Okay. So that should all be good. I'm just going to do a quick run on here and just make sure things are kind of working. The dragon won't be moving yet. But that's all working, but there is like a slight tweak here, and it looks like the unbounded scrolling got turned on. And I don't know if it did that by default or if at some point I accidentally clicked it. But unbounded scrolling, you always want that turned off. So it could be that I accidentally clicked that at some point. You could go back in the video and watch. Or it maybe did that by default. But now if I run it, that unbounded scrolling, yeah, now this looks good. So if you get that same issue I did, make sure that unbounded scrolling is turned off on all of your levels. And right now this looks good. I can shoot. So that means the event sheet is on there and it's working and it's scrolling properly. We can see the cage moving. Now the dragon and cage don't do anything yet because we haven't programmed it. But right now this is looking good. Okay, so if you want to double check and test yours to make sure it's matching up with that, you should be good to go. Now that we have the base of our level set up, let's go ahead and start putting some events in. So we're going to go to our ES game, and we're going to go into the Flip, Combat, and Collisions group. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up so that Flip can't go past the boss marker, and then eventually we'll program so that the boss marker affects the boss as well. So in the Flip Combat group, I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom, and I'm going to add a new event to the Flip Combat group. And we're going to just do Flip on collision with another object, and we're going to have him collide with the boss marker. Okay, so you should have Flip on collision with boss marker. And then what we're going to do is basically when he hits it, we want Flip to just get pushed back to the left a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in action here for Flip, and we're going to do something called set vector X. So remember we did set vector Y, like when he bounced on the knight to like push him up a little bit. We can do the same thing for vector X. So vector X is going to be like a left and right axis. So we're going to push him to the left by doing set vector X. And we're just going to set it to like -500. So if we just do -500. So what that means is if Flip touches the boss marker, it's going to push him back 500 pixels. So I can show you that really quick. So remember, the boss marker is here right by the wall, but it's invisible. And you can see when he touches it, he just gets pushed away. So this trick is really good anytime you want to do walls or have like characters bounce back from something. And that set vector X to -500 is really nice because you get that little bounce effect. Whereas if you didn't have it, it would be like this wall here where he would just kind of glitch into it or just stop, and it would be really weird. So it's nice that we have that little bounce off. So that part's all good. So what I recommend doing is when you're done with the group, just minimize it. I'm going to minimize all these groups I'm not using. So next we're going to go into the coconut collision groups, and we're just going to do a couple of quick collisions there with some of our new objects. So open up coconut collisions, go down here and add an event to it. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do on collision with the wall, we're going to destroy the coconut. So we're just going to do coconut on collision with another object. And when it collides with the wall, so coconut on collision with wall, we're going to do coconut destroy. There we go. Perfect. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do coconut on collision with boss. Now what you can do is if you're doing an event that's kind of similar, you can just copy and paste the last one. So if I just right click on this green arrow and copy, and I right click it again and I paste, I can get another one. Or remember, you can just do control drag and you can drag the whole event up and copy it that way. So here's coconut, and then what I can do is on this wall, I can right click it, I can replace object, and I can replace the wall with the boss. So if you want to just, if it's easier for you, it makes more sense just to make it from scratch and just do it that way, that's fine. But whatever way you do it, you just want to get a coconut on collision with boss, and then you want to have coconut destroy again. Okay. Now on the coconut collision with boss, we are going to add another action. And what we're going to do is we want to subtract one from the boss's health. Now remember, we made his health as an instance variable. So what we do is we add an action for the boss, and then we do subtract from. Okay, and we're going to subtract from his health, and we're going to subtract 1. Okay, so it should look like that. Then what we want to do is we want to make an event so that when the boss's health is 0, that he gets destroyed. So we're going to do that as a sub-event on this coconut collision with boss. So find your coconut collision with boss. You're going to find this green arrow here. You're going to right-click it. We're going to add a sub-event to that. And we want to compare if the boss's health is 0. So you do boss, and then you do compare variable, you compare instance variable, and we want change the top one to health equal to 0, and then that should be good. Okay, so then if the boss's health is equal to 0, we're going to destroy the fireball, we're going to destroy the boss, and we're going to destroy the boss marker so that Flip can get through. So you want to just do those 3 events. So you just do fireball, destroy, We want to do boss, destroy. These are all 3 separate actions. And then add another action, and we're going to do boss marker, destroy. Okay, so if you did it correctly, make sure that this boss health equals 0, it's indented underneath the on collision with boss. That means it's a sub-event of it. So the way that this reads is the coconut hits the boss. The coconut will always get destroyed no matter what, and it will subtract 1 from health. Then, after it subtracts, if his health becomes 0, then it destroys all those objects. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to minimize this group. And now we're going to make a group for all the boss codes. So we're actually going to code how the boss moves. So we're going to right click down here at the bottom. We're going to add a new group, and it's going to be called boss actions. Okay. Now, normally this active on start is checked, which means that the groups are active. We're actually going to uncheck that. We're going to make it so that this group is actually not active. So what that means is all the code that we put in the group won't actually trigger until we make an event that actually activates the group. And I'll explain why we do this in a little bit. Now, to be honest, it isn't super necessary. Like, you could have this group always active and you won't have a noticeable difference in your game, but we're doing this to kind of show you how to make your game more efficient, and I'll explain how this makes your game more efficient in a little bit. But whether this is, if this were active the whole time, you would honestly wouldn't really notice a difference, okay? All right. So I think we've got that all good. So now what we're going to do is the first thing we're going to do in our boss group is we're going to set up basically the boss being able to shoot. And we want it so that he's not just constantly shooting all the time. We want there to kind of be like a chance that he shoots. So it's a little bit random. Okay. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to make it so every 1.5 seconds, the boss is going to try to see if he can shoot or not. And we're going to set up a variable that will test it. So the first thing we're going to do is add an event to the boss action group. It's going to be system, and it's going to be every X seconds. So anytime you want something to happen every so many seconds, you do every X seconds. And we're going to change it to 1.5. Okay. This event now reads every 1.5 seconds. Okay. Now, before we can finish this code, we actually have to add another variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a variable called fire chance that it's basically going to be, it's going to randomly choose a number from a pool that we're going to give it. And then if it hits certain numbers, he's going to shoot, and other numbers he's not going to shoot. We're going to make this a local variable. So to make a local variable, you just right click an event within a group that you want to be kind of in the scope of that variable, and it will create it within that area. So if I right click on this every 1.5 seconds, I can go to add at the top, and then I get the option to make a local variable. Okay. This local variable is going to be called fire chance. Okay, and it's going to be a number, and it can start at 0. That's fine. And if you do it correctly, you'll see it'll pop up here as a local variable. Okay. A local variable is basically functions the same way as a global variable. The only difference is that this variable can only be accessed now by code within this group in this area. Okay. So you do that when you don't want the code to always be accessed. And that's part of the reason we're making the group inactive, is because for most of the game, the code in here isn't going to be needed. It's only going to be needed on level 4. And so what's going to happen is, well, let me finish this event and it will make more sense. So if you have the local variable in there, now we can finish our every 1.5 second event, okay? So what we're going to do is every 1.5 seconds, we are going to set this variable to be a certain number randomly, okay? So I'm going to add an action. I'm going to do system, set value, and I'm going to set the value of fire chance. And what I want it to be is I want there to be like 5 different numbers they can choose from, or 6 different numbers. We'll do 6 different numbers. Okay. So I'm going to type in the word floor. And then I'm going to do a left parentheses. I'm going to type in the word random. Then I'm going to do another left parentheses, and I'm going to type the number 6, and then 2 right parentheses like this. Okay. Now, this might not make sense to you initially, but let me explain it. So this says we're going to set fire chance to floor random 6. Well, let's start with random 6. So random means it's going to choose a random number, and the 6 means it's going to choose between 6 different numbers. So what it's going to do is going to choose a number, and so when people see floor random 6, they immediately think it's going to choose a number between 1 and 6, but that's actually not true. A computer always starts counting with the number 0. So if we start at 0 and we're going to choose 6 numbers, random 6 actually means it's going to be a number between 0 and 5. Okay. Now, if I just had random 6 on here, it would choose a number between 0 and 5, but it's going to include decimals. So it could choose 1.23334 and 2.765, whatever. It's going to get all these ugly decimals on there. So we put the word floor at the beginning. Floor means it's going to round down to the nearest whole number. Okay, so that means if it chooses 5.02567, it'll just round it down to 5. Okay. If you just want it to be a solid number, you could change it to int. If you did int, that stands for integer, and it would just chop the decimal off. Or if you wanted it to round up, you type CEIL, and that stands for ceiling. So floor is round down, ceiling is round up. Int would just be chop off the decimal. Okay, so for this one, we're doing floor random 6, but you could do the other ones and it would work roughly the same. Okay, it just depends on if you want to round up or down or not round at all. Okay, so every 1.5 seconds, it's going to set the fire chance to that. So every 1.5 seconds, this fire chance variable is changing to a different number every 1.5 seconds. It's basically what that means. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to add a sub event to this. So you're going to right click here on this empty spot on the every 1.5 seconds, add a sub event. Okay, and we're going to compare what fire chance is. So we're going to do system compare variable. And we're going to say if fire chance is not equal to 0. Okay, so basically if it picks a number and it's not 0, then this is going to trigger. And then this is where we're going to make the boss shoot. So I'm going to add an action for the boss. First thing is we're going to set his animation. And remember, when you're doing an animation, just delete that out, type a quotation mark, and it will give you your choices. So we're going to have set his animation to shoot. Then we're going to have the boss spawn a fireball. So we're going to have boss spawn another object. We're going to choose fireball. Okay. For the layer number, we want layer number 2 because we want the spawn on the main layer. So we're going to do the number 2. And we want image point 1. Remember, we put that image point 1 on his mouth. So that's going to make the fireball come out from the mouth. Okay. So basically, every 1.5 seconds, it's going to choose a number from 0 to 5. And it's going to become that number. As long as it's not 0, then it's going to spawn. So because we're choosing 6 numbers, 0 is the only option that won't shoot a fireball. So basically, we've created a 5 out of 6 chance that he will shoot. So most of the time, he will shoot. Okay. If we make this number higher, it's more likely he will shoot because there's more options then that are not 0. Okay. If we lower this number, like let's say we did floor random 2. If we did floor random 2, the only options that can happen then will be 0 or 1. And so then there'll be a 50% chance he will shoot and a 50% chance he will not shoot. So you can adjust and play with the numbers if you want the dragon to shoot faster or slower. That's totally up to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it really quick. So let's go to level 4 and we'll run it. So every 1.5 seconds, most of the time he should shoot. Sometimes he will not shoot. But, okay, so here's the thing. Remember, we made the group inactive on start. So all of the events in that group aren't working. Okay, so I'm going to just really quickly for testing. I'm just going to right click this. You don't have to do this, by the way. You can just watch. I'm going to change this so that it's active because it's not till a little bit later that we put the event in. So now if that group is active, the dragon should have a chance to shoot. Yep, there he goes. And you see the mouth opens and it shoots. So this is the part where when we put the speed to -400, that's what's making it go to the left. If you left your fireball speed at +400, they're going to shoot to the right. which right now it really doesn't matter either way because, like I said, we're going to do an event later that fixes it. But at least I could text that or test that really quick. All right, so I'm going to edit this back, make it inactive. Okay, so that's all good to go there. So then what we'll do here is we will fix that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add one more action onto this fire chance, and it's going to be for the fireball. And we're going to do set angle of motion. Angle of motion. Make sure you do this angle down here. It's in the bullet and it has the bullet symbol. Don't do this regular set angle. This set angle just means it's going to rotate the object. Angle of motion means the actual bullet direction. Okay, and we're going to set the angle of motion to 170. Whoops. So 170, based on our chart, is going to be kind of to the left, but at a little bit of a downward angle. Because if you remember on Flip's Coconut, 180 was the angle to shoot straight left. So 170, we're just going like 10 degrees lower than that to the left. Now that I have this event in here, it's going to go at the angle of 170, whether that speed was 400 or negative 400. So you're basically good right away once we put that in. Okay. So I think we're good with that stuff. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to minimize this group, and we're actually going to make it so that this group now can become active. So the way we're going to activate the group is if the boss is on the screen at start of layout. So what I want you to do is you're going to go up to your on start of layout event, which should be at the top. If you're following the game presentation, I think they have it buried in like the flip movement. But if you're following my videos, I think I told you to put it up here at the top. And traditionally, I think it always makes sense to just keep your on start of layout at the top. Or even make a group at the top that's called like on start, or even that's called system events, and you put your main system events in there. That's up to you. But make a sub event to your on start of layout. So right click and add a sub event. And we want to do boss, and we want to check if he is visible. So I'm going to type in visible. I'm going to do boss is visible. Okay. Then if the boss is visible on start of layout, we're going to add an action, and we are going to we're going to do system, set group active. And this is just like an animation. You can delete it out the quotation marks, type 1, and we want to pick the boss actions group, and we want to make it active. Okay. So you still might be asking, well, what's the point of even having it inactive in the first place? So the reason why we want it inactive and then to become active when the boss is visible is this. This group has this every 1.5 seconds that's always constantly ticking, and it's constantly setting this fire chance local variable. So if this group is always active, even if we're on like level 1 or 2 that don't even have a boss, the computer is still processing this fire chance, and it's still setting values to it every 1.5 seconds. And so it's really important that we don't have things like that happening in a game. And you can imagine if you're doing a game that's very big and very complicated, you're going to have tons of variables going at different times on different levels. You don't want things constantly calculating because it's going to slow your game down. It's not going to be able to process as fast. So it's important that even though this is kind of an invisible thing that we don't see, and you wouldn't notice it. Like if this was active the whole time, like I said, you're probably not going to notice a difference, but it's because this game is fairly simple. There isn't a lot going on in this game, but you want to understand as a programmer, you want your game to be efficient. So this is basically a trick to make it more efficient. This group is only going to run when the boss is active on level 4 when it starts. That way, it's not constantly processing this. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. So like I said, it's like an invisible thing. You don't really notice it, but for efficiency, it's a good thing to understand. All right, so now that we added that little piece up there, we can go back into the boss action group. And what we're going to do is we're now going to make it so that the boss can move. Okay, so we're going to add a new event to the boss actions group. And what we're going to do is every 1 second, we're going to have the boss choose a different action. So we're going to do system every X seconds. Every 1 second is good. So leave it on the 1. Okay, and then we're going to add an action for the boss. And we're going to do set value. And we're going to set the value of his action instance variable. Okay. Now what we're going to do for the value is instead of just setting his action to a certain value, we're going to have it choose between some options. So we're going to type the word choose without quotation marks and double click on the word choose that pops up. Okay. Then we're going to do a parentheses. And then in quotation marks, we're going to put all the options that he can have. So we're going to make a quotation mark. We're going to do left with a capital L, quotation mark. Then we separate the other actions with commas. So I'm going to do a comma, quotation mark, and right is going to be another action that he could take, comma. We're going to do up in quotation marks with a comma. I'm going to put the word up in there twice. So do 2 ups, and I'll explain why in a little bit here. And then we're going to do wait as another one. And then a parentheses. So it should look like that. Okay, so the word choose, then within parentheses, you're putting left, right, up, wait. They're all in quotation marks, and they're separated by commas. Okay. So basically what this event says is every 1 second, the boss is going to set his action instance variable to left, right, up, or wait. Okay. So I'll explain why we put up in there twice in a little bit here. So then what we have to do is we just have to make a series of events that tell the boss what he does when his action equals those things. So we're going to add a new event to boss actions. We're going to say boss compare instance variable. Yep, right here. Then we're going to say if his action equals, and then we're going to put left with a capital L in quotation marks. Okay. Then when his action is left, we're going to add an action for the boss, and we're going to simulate control, and we're going to simulate walking left. So that's with the platform behavior there. Okay. Then we also want to set his animation to walk. So I'm going to add another action for boss, animation. Delete the quotation marks, type a new one, and then click on walk. Okay. So now we're obviously going to do the same thing for right. So if you want to do that all from scratch, you can, or you can copy this one. So I'm going to just right click here on the left side, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to right click there again, and I'm going to paste it. And then I'm just going to edit this one, and I'm going to change it to right. So once again, you can do it from scratch or copy it, whatever you want to do. Okay, and then I have to change this to simulate right. Okay, so this is what the first two should look like. If his action is left, simulate left and walk. If his action is right, simulate right and walk. Okay. Then we have to do one for up. So if I want to, I could copy it again. So it's already copied, so I could just click paste again and paste another one. And then I could change this one to up with a capital U. Notice I'm consistent. You have to be consistent with your labeling. So since I'm doing all these actions, notice here when I did the choose, I did all these with capital letters. So then out here, these have to be capital so that they line up. And it's just like on the night. If one of the letters is lowercase, they won't actually line up, and then it won't actually trigger the code. Okay. And then all we need to do here is we don't need to set an animation for jump, or well, no, we don't. We're going to do that later, but we just want to simulate a jump. So the up one is just going to be simulate jump. That's all you're going to have there. Okay. Now to do the jump animation, let's add another event to boss actions. And we're going to do boss, and we're going to do on jump. Then here we're going to add an action for the boss, and we're going to make his animation go to jump. Set animation to jump. Okay. So then boss on jump, set animation to jump. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do another one for on landed. We're going to set animation to default. So we can just make another event in the boss actions group for the boss. We're going to do on landed. And then we're going to go down here. We're going to do boss, set animation. And we're going to go default. Okay. All right. So before I move on, let me kind of explain how this all works. So every 1 second, the boss is going to choose one of these actions, left, right, up, or wait. So let's say the first one, it chooses left. It's going to trigger this left right here, which is going to make him walk left. Then another second passes, and then it chooses right. So then all of a sudden, he's going to go to right. He's going to stimulate right. So essentially what it's going to do, it's going to make it look like the boss is moving around randomly. Now, the reason why we put up in here twice is because we're making it more likely that he will do up instead of the other actions. So the boss should jump slightly more often than he walks left or right. Okay. Now you'll notice that one of the options the boss can choose is wait, and we haven't set an action for wait here. That's fine, because wait, we just want the boss to stop. So there's just a chance that the boss will stop. Well, any word that isn't programmed, the boss just won't do anything. So we type the word wait because that tells us we want the boss to wait, like it makes sense to us as the programmer. But you could type in any word here, and as long as it's not programmed, it'll work. So if the boss chose left, right, up, or pancakes, pancakes will do the same thing. It'll make him wait. So this is something that makes sense to us. Okay. So let's go ahead and test it really quick. Now notice the group is inactive here, right? But when I start level 4, the boss will be visible, so it should activate the group. So let's see if the movement is working. So you'll see here that, yep, it chose left, then it chose jump, now it chose wait, now left, now right, and you can see the fire chances going, and he's walking around and kind of doing his own thing. Now, we haven't programmed the boss marker stuff yet, I don't believe. Nope, we haven't. That's actually what we're going to be doing next. So right now, if that wall wasn't there, the boss could actually just keep walking to the left. So we're going to get the boss marker going here next. So let's go back to our ES game. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of events. And we're going to add an event to the boss action group. And we're going to start with boss is overlapping another object. So we're going to say boss is overlapping the boss marker. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is basically, if I look at this really quick, we want to make it so that if he hits this boss marker, that he quick goes back to the right. And if he hits this boss marker, he goes to the left. Now, we're not going to do the vector trick like we did with flip because we're not really controlling this guy. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to just change his action. So if he walks left into this, we're going to change his action to right. And if he walks into this, we're going to change his action to left. So in order to do that, we have to kind of compare what his X is. So on this boss's overlapping boss marker, you're going to right click. We're going to add another condition, okay? And we're going to do boss, and we're going to do compare X. Let's see, it should be at the bottom. Compare X, okay? And we're going to compare if his X is greater than, and then for the second X here, we're going to see if it's greater than boss marker dot X. So boss marker dot X. Okay. And remember, boss marker dot X just means the X coordinate of the boss marker. Okay. Then, so if his X is greater than boss marker dot X, which means right here, so he has to be overlapping it. So overlapping just a little bit. And if his X is greater than, that means he's on the right side of the X. So that means he's here. Okay, because he's on the right side of this guy here. So we want him to move to the right. So we're going to do action for the boss. And we're going to do set value. We're going to change his action to right. So it's got to be in quotation marks with the capital R, just like that. Okay. Then we're going to do the same event, but we want to do it for left. So what I recommend you do is you click over here, and you either hold Control and drag, or just right-click copy, right-click the same spot and paste. And then what we have to do is just change this X comparison to less than, because that means he's on the left side of the boss marker. And so then what we want to do is set his action to left. Just like that. Okay. So now what'll happen is if he hits the boss marker based on which side he's on, he's going to basically move in the opposite direction. And that way it'll look fluid. It just looks like he's maybe randomly choosing to walk that way, but it's going to be convenient that he'll never leave the boss markers. Okay. All right, so now what we're going to do is let's just add a couple of additional collisions down here. So we want to do some coconut and fireball collisions. So I'm going to add another event to boss actions. This technically you could put it in coconut collisions if you want to. Sometimes it gets kind of iffy on where to put stuff, right? Because there might be an event that involves two different things that have their own groups. So then it's just up to you as the programmer. So If it makes sense for this to go in the coconut collision because it is a coconut collision, put it there. But it might make more sense to go in the boss group because it has to do with the fireball, right? So I'm going to put mine in the boss group, but you could choose. If you want to switch it, that's fine. So I'm going to do coconut on collision with another object, and we're going to collide with the fireball. Okay. We're going to destroy the coconut. So that way it's going to be a little bit more difficult to hit the dragon. So I'm going to do coconut destroy as the action. So the fireball essentially can block your shots. Okay. Then we're going to do fireball on collision with wall because we want the fireball to also get destroyed on certain things, right? So fireball collision with the wall. We're going to destroy the fireball. So we're going to do fireball destroy like that. Okay. And then we want to do fireball on collision with flip, because that's obviously got to do something, right? Fireball on collision with another object. And we're going to choose flip. Okay. So when the fireball collides with flip, we're going to destroy the fireball. Now I could just grab this one and hold control and drag it if I want to. Okay. We're going to subtract 1 from lives. So we're going to do system, subtract from lives 1. Okay. And then we're going to just do a 1 second wait and restart the layout. So we're going to do add action, system wait, 1 second. And then we're going to add an action. We're going to do a system restart. Good. Okay, we got that. All right, so I think that's it for the boss stuff. So I'm going to minimize that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start setting up for like our end game stuff. So we're actually going to make some new layouts. So we're going to make like a start and instructions and a game over screen. So I'm going to right click on the layout folder. I am going to add a layout. I am going to add an event sheet for this one because we are going to make a new event sheet. So you're going to click add event sheet. Okay, so for the layout, we're going to call it start. And for that new event sheet down here, it's called event sheet 1. I'm going to rename it and I'm going to call it ES start. So I want that lowercase actually. ES start. Okay. So now this new start layout has this ES start event sheet. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the other layouts first and then we'll start going into the settings. So let's go ahead and make another layout. And this one we are going to not add an event sheet. So we're going to say add layout only. And this one is going to be called instructions. And then in the instructions properties, we're going to assign it ES start. Okay. Then let's make another layout called game over. And this one we are going to add an event sheet. We're going to call this one game over. Okay, and then we're going to take this event sheet, we're going to rename it, and this one's going to be called ES Game Over. Okay, so just to review what we did was we right-clicked on the Layouts folder, we made Start, Instructions, and Game Over. Start, you should have added a new event sheet called ES Start. Instructions, you do not add an event sheet, and you assign it ES Start. And then Game Over, you do add a new event sheet called ES Game Over. Then what we're going to do is on these 3 new layouts, we're going to set the size to 1280 by 720. So click on Start, go up to size on the upper left, 1280, 720. Okay, do the same thing for instructions, 1280 by 720. And then go to Game Over, also 1280 by 720. Okay, perfect. So we've got all those in. All the layouts just need a main and a background layer, so not as complicated as the other ones. So I'm going to go on the Start layout. I'm going to add a layer to the top. We're going to rename this one background, rename this one main. Okay, and just go ahead and do that for all 3 of these. So click on instructions, double click it, right click, add layer to top, right click, rename. Whoops. So background. There we go. And then rename main, and then do the same thing here on game over, double click it. So I got main and background there. Oh, so the start I actually missed. I did the instructions. Okay, so right click, add layer to top, rename background, and rename main. Okay. You notice all three of these layouts did have some stuff in common, right? All of them we made 1280 by 720, and all of them we made the main and background layers. So what you could do in the future, as future reference, let's say we made the start layout, right? We could have made that, made both the layers and set the size, and then I could have just duplicated it twice and then renamed the other two. So that probably would have been quicker. But because you guys are learning a lot of the things, we are kind of just doing step by step so you get the hang of it. Through repetition is really how you guys are going to learn this. So that's why I don't always give you the fastest way to do things, but I'll sometimes let you know about them. Okay. Some of you do get it faster than others, and some of you do need that repetition in there. All right, so we got the layouts added in. We did all that. So now what we need to do is we need to make the backgrounds for each one, and you should have them in your folder. So let's start by double clicking the start layout. I'm going to do Control minus to zoom out a little bit. If you press Control minus and it doesn't work, just click once on the layout and then it should work. Okay, so I'm going to start by double clicking, and these are going to be tiled backgrounds. So go ahead and make a tiled background. And then this one I'm going to call start background. Okay, so I'm going to call it start BG. Click on the screen, go ahead and load in a single image, and there should be, the background should all be in here, right? So let's see, here is the start background right there, and it's labeled start background. And then basically all you have to do is set the position and size to match your layout, and you want to make sure it's on the background layer. So I did make a mistake there. I forgot to click on background layer first. So this is on the main layer. So I'm going to click in the properties, change it to background. I'm going to set the position to 0, 0, and I'm going to set the size to 1280 by 720. Okay, now, and then you want to lock it down. Okay, so I'm going to lock that down. Now, if you typed in 00 for the position and it does not go in the upper left corner, it means you made it a sprite instead of a tiled background, which a sprite would be fine for this instance, but you'd have to go into the image window and change the origin to upper left. Since we made it a tiled backgrounds default to have that upper left origin, so that's why we could just type in 00 without changing an origin. Okay, so hopefully that will help you fix that in case that kind of made a little bit of mistake for you. All right, so we got the start background on. Let's go ahead and get the instructions one on. So this time I'm going to be smart and click on background first. Then I'm going to zoom out a little bit because I like to be able to see it all. Then I'm going to double click the background. Then I'm going to make a tile background. And this one I'm going to call instructions BG. Insert, click on screen, load the image, and we should have the instructions in here. Right here, instructions background, perfect. And that's nice, and it's just got them printed right on there. Position 00, size 1280 by 720, and lock it down, and you're good to go there. And then let's do the game over one. So double click game over. Same process. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, make sure I'm on the background layer. Double click, insert a tiled background. You would want to call it Game Over BG. I accidentally double clicked through it, so I'll fix it after. Click on the screen, load image, find the Game Over. Now, yep, there is just one Game Over right here. I think there's another one too, isn't there? I don't know, maybe not. All right, so Game Over background here. Perfect, we'll put that on. And that should be good. Same thing we're going to do. So I'm going to rename this because I forgot to name it. So anytime you forget to name a sprite, just finish the process. Once you get out here again, you can rename it. So I'm going to call this one Game Over BG, position 00, size 1280 by 720. Okay, so I've got that on there, and I'm going to lock it down. All right, so if you've done it correctly, instructions should look like this, start should look like this, game over should look like this. Okay, All right, so we've got that done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to double click on the start screen. We are going to add a button that we can click on. And we want a button that will take us to the instruction screen and a button that will take us to the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure the main layer is selected now. I'm going to double click and we're going to add a sprite and we're going to call it play button. I'm just going to do play BTN for short. Click on the screen, load a single image. You should have a play button in here, right here. Okay, and I don't think we have to do anything to that. Okay. They give you a specific position. They say 690 by 610, but it doesn't have to be right there if you don't want it to be. I'll do 690 by 610 and see how it looks. Yeah, so they have the play button right there. Okay. If you wanted it more off to the side or something, you could, but that's where they have it. And then we also need an instructions button. So I'm going to double click again. I'm going to make another sprite and I'm going to call it instructions button. I'm going to do instructions BTN, insert, click on screen, load image, find the instructions button, which is right here. And then that one, just tuck that into the upper right corner. Something like that would be fine. You can use the arrow keys to nudge it if you want to. But position something like this. I have mine at 1136, 134, and that looks pretty good. Maybe it could be a little bit off from that, but something like that. Just tuck that up in the corner for your instructions button. Okay, so we've got that. We got the event sheets assigned. We got that. Okay, so now we're going to go to the instructions layout. The instructions layout also needs a play button, so you want to make sure you get it on there. So I'm going to scroll down now since I've already made it, and I'm going to put this play button here. Okay, it's warning me that the layer's locked, which is fine. So I'm going to unlock it. So I was on the wrong layer. I do want it on the main layer, so I'm going to switch that really quick to main, lock that back down. Okay, and then this one, it is good to put it at the same position as the other one. So I'm going to do 690 by 610. So 690, 10. So that looks good to me there. Okay, so we've got that. Then what we need to do is we need to go to the game over layout. Make sure you're on the main layer, and then we're going to make a play again button. So I'm going to double click. I'm going to make a sprite. We are going to call it play again, BTN for play again button. Click on the screen, load an image, and you should see the play again button down here. All right, and then that one, they give us a position of 782 by 638. 2, 6, 8. Now, once again, if you just eyeball it and kind of put it where you want to, I'm really not going to dock points for it unless you do something like cover Flip's face, right? Or do something like that that's actually distracting. But as long as it's there and it looks decent, I'm not really going to take off points for that. So don't worry about if it's not perfect. All right, so we've got all of our buttons set. The next thing we need to do is we're going to need to go to the event sheet and make it so you can click on these. But in order to click on them, we actually need to add the mouse object to our game. So if you remember earlier, we had to actually add this keyboard object in, and that allows us to do keyboard controls. We have to do the same thing for the mouse. So I'm going to double click out here, and instead of adding like a sprite, I'm going to add the mouse in. So it's under input here, it's for the mouse. So the mouse, like the keyboard, it's not a physical thing that you actually see on the layout, but you can see it's here in our object window, and now we can use it to program. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our ES Start event sheet. Remember, this is the event sheet that the start and instructions layouts are going to use. So basically, we're going to make an event so that when we click on the button, that it will actually work. So I'm going to add an event, and we're going to do mouse, and we're going to do on object clicked. We can choose a left or a right click. We want to do left click. And when we click on the play button, I'm going to click done. So it should say mouse on left click on the play button. We're going to add an action and we're going to do system. And then we're going to do go to layout because we want to go to a certain layout. So I'm just going to type go to layout. and I'm going to choose to go to the start layout. So this one, don't do choose layout by name, just do go to layout, and then you can just choose the level 1. Actually, I picked the wrong one, level 1. Okay, so when we click on the play button, we want it to go to level 1. I think when I initially did, I said start. That would be bad because it would just keep taking you back to start layout. So when you click on the play button, you want it to go to level 1 to start the game. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to go to ES Game Over, and we're going to program the play again button. So we're going to add an event, and we're going to do mouse. We're going to say on object clicked. If we left click the play again button, done. This one we do want to go to start, because when you have a game over, then we want to go back to the start screen. So I'm going to add an action, system, go to layout, and we want to go back to the start screen. Okay, so that should all be working. So we can test it really quick. So let's actually try to run our start layout. So if I double click it, I can click play. So if I click play, you can see it goes to level 1. And then we can test the instructions. If I click instructions, okay, I haven't programmed that yet, right? So it doesn't work. So that makes sense. Okay, so let's go back to our ES start. And let's program that in right now. So if I go back to ES start, I can add an event for the mouse on object clicked. And now when we click the instructions button right here, we do system, add an action, system, go to layout, and we want to go to the instructions layout. Okay. And now if I test it, so let's go back to the start screen, run it. Go to the instructions. Now here's one of the most common mistakes is when I'm grading a project, I go to the instructions and they don't put a play button on here. So then I'm just permanently stuck on this page with no way to continue the game. And that's really bad. You don't ever want to put the player in a position where they can't continue the game. So make sure the play button is on here. And because the instruction should be assigned to ES Start, ES Start says when I click play, go to level 1, I can from here click play and it still takes me to level 1. So that's how it should be working if you did it properly. Okay, so that's it for the buttons. We're almost done. We're actually getting really, really close to the end. Okay. All right. So the last thing we're going to do, well, let's see, we did that. Oh, okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the ES Game Over really quick. Okay. Now, when we click the play again button to go back to start, there's actually a couple of things we want to do before it actually goes to the start layout. So one thing we need to do is we actually need to reset our global variables. So that's like our lives, our score, our ammo, that kind of stuff. Because if you beat the game and you have like 9 ammo and you have like 1,000 points, right now, if I restart the game, all that stuff's going to carry over to the next game, and we don't want that. We want everything to reset. So we're going to add an action here. So just so you're not confused, we're on ES Game Over right now. Okay, so on ES Game Over, find this clicked play again. It's the only event you have on there. Add an action. We're going to do system. We need to reset global variables so that they all go back to their normal values. And we need to re-deactivate the boss group, because if I play level 4 and I activate the boss group, if I restart the game, it's going to stay active. So we have to deactivate that group again. So I'm going to add an action for system, set group active, and I want to do a quotation mark to get boss actions, and I want it deactive. That way on my second playthrough of the game, it isn't calculating that fire chance the whole time, right? Then it's very, very important that these two have to trigger before I go to the start layout. So I got to do that because I want everything reset before I go and restart the game. Okay, so just like that. We did that already again. So I think the presentation has something where you have a different screen for game over win. So let me just check really quick. I just want to check my image files and make sure. Well, no, I'll just do it. We'll just do it. So the game has changed a little bit over the years. So we used to just have the one game over screen, but now they added a game over win. So let's go ahead and try it really quick. And I think there should be an image for it. but we'll see. So let's go ahead and let's add a layout. And we're going to call it, we're going to say add layout only. And we're going to call it game over win. So we're going to have a different screen for if you win and if you lose. So we're going to call this one game over win. And we're going to assign it the ES game over, the same thing. Okay. And the game over win should be 1280 by 720. Okay, same size as everything else. And basically it just has like a different win screen on it. So let's go ahead on this game over win. Let's double click and let's try to add in a tiled background. And we'll just call it, I'll just call it win background. Insert. And let's see if the win background is in here. Instructions, game over. Oh, yep, there is. Game over win right here. Yep. So here's the game over win background. So we'll put that on there. So you get like a better background for if you win than if you lose. So yeah, we'll do this. Okay. And then we'll do position 0, 0. And we'll do size 1280 by 720. Like that. And then the game over win should also have a main layer. So let's just go ahead and do the same thing as we did on the other ones. Add a layer to the top, call it main, take layer 0, call it background. This should be on the background and lock it down. And then all we have to do is on the main layer, just add a play again button to it. So we'll take the play again button here and just put that there. All right. That way we can have a different screen for if we lose than if we win. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to program both of our different game over screens to work. So let's go back to our original ES game. Okay. And we're going to just do a new system event. So I'm actually not going to put it in a group. I'm just going to add an event at the bottom. Okay. And we're going to do system compare variable. And we're going to say if lives equals 0. Okay. And if flips lives ever equals 0, we're going to go to the regular game over layout. So I'm going to add an action for system. And you go to layout, game over. Okay. And then because it's a system command, I like it being at the top by all these other system commands. So I'm going to drag mine up there. But if you want to leave yours at the bottom, that's fine. Okay. Then we're going to go into the flip collisions group. And we're going to go to the bottom of that group and we're going to do a collision with the cage where he wins. So I'm going to say add event to flip combat collisions. We're going to do flip on collision with another object. And we're going to choose the cage. And then we're going to add an action. And we're going to do system. We're going to say go to layout. And we're going to go to game over win if he touches the cage. Okay, so on collision with cage, go to game over win. Then just a couple of other things we have to do in our on start of layout up here at the top. Okay, there are some more actions we have to do with our text. So one thing we have to do is we have to make sure that they all get set visible again, because what we'll do later on is we're going to make the text invisible on like the game over screens and stuff. So we have to make them visible again here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an action for all the text objects, and I'm just going to set them visible. So I did text ammo, and now I'm doing set visible, and then I'm going to make it visible. And then what I might do is I could just copy this and then just replace this with the other one. So if I right click this text ammo, replace with text lives, replace this one with text score, and then so now it should be ammo, lives, and score should all be visible. Now here's the other thing we have to do. We have to take our text objects and move them all to the HUD layer. Now here's the reason why. Our text objects are global, right? So they travel with us from level to level. Remember, we didn't have to put them on here, right? The problem is like when I go to the start screen, there is no HUD layer, but the text objects themselves are still global. So they're going to appear here later on, and they're going to get pushed like onto this main layer. And then when I restart the game, the text objects might be on the main layer instead of the HUD layer. So in our ES game, in this on start of layout, we're just going to put some safety net events here to make sure that all of our text objects are on the HUD layer. So I'm going to add an action for one of the text objects. So we'll do text ammo first, and then we're going to say move, and we're going to move to layer, and then we're going to type in a quotation mark and then pick the HUD layer. And it should say move to layer HUD. And then I'm just going to copy that and do that for the other two. So I'm going to replace object with text score, replace object with text lives. So basically on this on start of layout, you want the ammo, lives, and score to be visible, and you want them all to move to the HUD layer. Okay. The last thing we're going to do in this video is this is another one of those things that you won't necessarily notice, but it's good to know as a programmer if you're actually going to make a game. So if we were going to actually publish this game, we have to tell it what layout to actually start with. Because right now we're in editing mode, so it's always going to run whatever layout we have selected, right? But if we were to publish it, it doesn't know what to start with right now, right? So if I click on your game title here at the very top in the upper right of your project window, go to the left side, and there's this category here called first layout. And right now it just says default. If you click it, you want to pick the start layout. Okay. Now this isn't going to make any difference for like right now when you're editing. Like it's still going to run level 2 if I pick level 2. But what this means that I just did by changing this first layout to start here, it means once the game is published, that's the layout it's going to start with. Okay. All right. So that's it for section 7. You only have one more section to go after this.